We want to welcome you to the 14th episode of the Be Life podcast, coming to you from Canton Nazarene Church here in Canton, Ohio. And, this week I talked to Josh Potts, who is on staff here at the church, and we were talking, and I texted him early in the week, and I said, Josh, because first of all, let me explain. I respect this young man very, very much. And I said, Josh, it's in your court this week. I want you to come up with a subject, and we'll talk about that. And I just wanted him to come up with one, and I knew that he would come up with one. So as the week progressed, this was like on Monday, I think, that I texted you, correct?
Yeah.
And then Wednesday, I still hadn't heard from him, and it's like, this is getting so good because he's really thinking this thing through. It wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. It was something that he was going to come up with that was going to be blockbuster. It was going to be great. Now, so he did, and I'm going to let him talk about this, and introduce this. But first, I want to say this. Whenever there is a topic such as Josh is going to explain, there is a tendency for people to take sides. And in our society nowadays, it's really easy then to demonize the person with a different opinion. And so it's going to be your challenge as viewers today to keep an open mind, because I'm going to tell you what, I love Josh. I love Josh as a brother. He's allowed, and I don't know where this is going. We may both agree totally, we may disagree, but he's allowed to have a different opinion about a certain subject in the context or the bubble of me loving him. And that love is not going to change. And I'm going to respect that. And we have to get back to this as a country. We have to get back to this as people, as neighbors, that, hey, look, let's be able to discuss these things realistically, but let's not hate each other over them and dig our heels in. And I've got to be right. And if I'm right, you've got to be wrong. Our society is too messed up like that now. So we're going to talk. Your job is to think through your thoughts as you go through this. Keep yourself from getting angry and taking a side. You may agree with one more than the other or whatever, but that doesn't make you right and the other person wrong. So let's just go ahead with this. That's kind of like my warning label. Does that make sense? Josh, go ahead and explain what you came up with this week, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, when you give that introduction of this might be a controversial or divisive issue, I mean, I don't think that really narrows it down, because there's so many things that are divisive right now. And even this last week and what's gone on in the news and in politics, a lot of things have happened. It's the season where the Supreme Court is handing down decisions. We had the first presidential debate, and we had some other news. And one story in particular really stood out to me as a Christian, and it was that Jeff Landry, the Louisiana governor, signed House Bill 71 into law, which says that every classroom in the state of Louisiana that's receiving public funding, whether that's an elementary school, a middle school, high school, a college, any classroom, needs to have a poster put up in the classroom displaying the 10 Commandments. And that really caught my attention because, first of all, the comments that I saw on any post, any video, any blog about this were just, it was people going back and forth. Like you said, really divisive. They were going at it. But it really stood out to me because as a Christian, I think to myself, why? Why is it so controversial? Why is it that these secular organizations are wanting to take a piece of my faith and legally require people to see it, legally require people to post it? And why, of all the pieces of my faith, of all the things in the Bible, of all the teachings of Jesus, why is it the 10 Commandments? And this isn't the first time that something like this has come up. A dozen different states in the US have tried to pass similar laws. And it's every single time it's controversial, and every single time it has ended with the Supreme Court not supporting it. The upper courts have always said, no, we're not going to support that. We're going to overturn it. And it just got me thinking, and I thought it'd be a good place for us to discuss this week.
So what is your initial reaction when you read that? Was it, yeah, great job, Governor, or was it, whew, I think you overstepped your bounds?
If I'm being honest, my reaction, I just rolled my eyes and I said, what is this? Because I'm thinking to myself, who is this guy? I've never heard of Jeff Laundrie before, but is it Laundrie or Laundrie? I don't know.
I think it's Landry.
Landry. Okay.
But he is the governor of Louisiana.
Yeah. And so he's clearly an important person, but why is he talking about this portion of my faith? And so I felt like I had some skin in the game when I first read it, because I'm like, I'm a Christian. I think I have an opinion on this. I might not know what my opinion is, but I think I have an opinion on it.
Yeah. I looked at it. The first thing that I said, and I think I said this to you when you first told me about it, is why the big deal?
Yeah.
That's my first thought. Why the big deal? Why the 10 Commandments? The 10 Commandments are benign. We have the golden rule.
Yeah.
Which is, and they don't mind putting that up in schools. That's fine. Do unto others as you would have someone do unto you, right? Is that close to what it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I believe there are multiple things that go on here. And just, well, I'm going to get into this deeper, but it's low-hanging fruit for those who want to eliminate any kind of Christianity from our country. It's low-hanging fruit. It's easy to go after.
Yeah.
And I think, it's funny because you talk about religion, you first have to define what religion is. Because if I'm an atheist, essentially that's a religion to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Every person has the way that they view mythos, the way that they view some sort of creator, some sort of purpose in life. Yeah. However they want to label it, everyone has religion.
Right. So I wanted to, everybody uses the First Amendment and the religious clause. And it says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise of thereof. So it's got two different sections there, two clauses. Congress shall make no law respecting or establishing a certain religion or prohibiting the free exercise of that religion or any religion. And then it gets into abridging freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and all those things. So I tried to go back, Josh, and think about the founding fathers and why they wrote that. And it was still fresh in their minds of what was going on in England when the Puritans left England, when the first settlers left.
Yeah, that was much closer to their time than ours.
So. Yes.
Yeah.
And so they were still reacting to the fact that there was an Anglican church, a Church of England, that for many years, if you didn't believe in it, you couldn't hold public office.
Yeah.
There were criminal attachments to them. Sometimes people were put to death.
Yeah.
Who didn't believe in it. So it was very much joined to every phase of English life. And so I think our founders were saying, we just don't want that here again.
Yeah.
So we have to put this down. And it wasn't so much a dogmatic statement as a objective. And so they put that in, and it was kind of, it's kind of nebulous to a certain extent. It's kind of, it's open-ended, is what I should say.
Yes.
And they really didn't plan on it being so regimented.
Yeah.
They were just saying, hey, look, we just don't want what we had in England.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Am
saw.
I right?
I would say so. They saw something that was an absolute, an extreme, and they said we don't want that, because the Bible's referenced a lot in a lot of different newspapers, a lot of different arguments, pamphlets, leaflets that were circulating at that time during our country's founding. But when it comes to that constitutional body that was meeting to formally determine how our country was going to run, religion was only brought up really two times, when Benjamin Franklin proposed that they open each session with prayer, and the second time when they put this negative that was, hey, we are not going to respect one religion over another. We are not going to require religious tests for office. And so I think about, if the only time it really came into conversation was, hey, we don't want this to get in the way, we don't want this to be divisive, like, I think there's something we can learn from that. Is it's not that they didn't value religion or valued one over another, but they didn't want it to tear apart the unity that had just been born in the United States of America.
Right. But then you have to define what religion is. You have to see, because I believe that our founding fathers on a whole, now I believe there were people with different beliefs and things, but I believe our founding fathers on a whole believed in God.
Yeah. Yeah, most historians would support that most of them were theists, coming from some sort of Christian tradition. Um, and but even those ones that came from a Christian tradition, it's not our modern evangelical version of Christianity. So they may have pursued God in their own personal life and been very devoted to God. But what that faith looked like in the 18th century and what it looks like for us, I mean, they're just practiced two different ways. And so I think that they intentionally set up a country that allowed them to practice that way. And as time has moved on, we practice our faith a different way. And that's okay, because we're both trying to pursue God, and we're trying to pursue goodness, and we're trying to make our country and the world around us a better place.
Don't you think, though, that the original Puritans who came practiced religion maybe a little bit more punitive,
Yes.
but still practiced it in a congregational form of worship
Yeah.
that we do today?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, just now I was like highlighting that there's differences, but there's absolutely things that are in common. Yeah, it was a different flavor,
Yeah.
but they're still gathering together as a community. They're still honoring God, and they still believe that Jesus was the God man.
Mhm.
And those core things that, as you said when you opened up, that are still within that bubble of like, we're brothers and sisters in Christ.
Right. So I guess I look at this and I say, why can't a governor say, you could put these up? Why is that infringing on this First Amendment and the religious clause? And I tried to think of it. I mean, really, I could go back and forth. I can go either way. I'm kind of sitting on the fence on this.
Yeah.
But I want to read this. These are what the opponents of the law said.
Okay.
And I thought it was interesting because they always seem to go at an argument with the same talking points.
Yes.
Maybe we all do that, but I don't know. The law prevents students from getting an equal education. There's that equal education thing. In other words, if you put the 10 Commandments in my school, you will prevent students from getting an equal education. That's one of their arguments. I don't know how that happens. I really don't. And I would love to hear if it does. And here's the other one that always is thrown out. Will keep children who have different beliefs from feeling safe at school. So you bring up equal and safety, the two buzzwords that immediately are used to attack this. Well, I don't see any of that here, because the 10 Commandments don't say every year you've got to go to Mecca, or once in your lifetime you have to go to the Vatican. and visit the Pope.
Yeah.
These aren't strict guidelines. So it's not like you're now forcing people to show their hands, so to speak. They also get into this. Even among those who may believe in some version of the Ten Commandments, some version, I don't understand, but maybe they're right. The particular text that they adhere to can differ from religious denomination or tradition. Possibly true. The government should not be taking sides in this theological debate. Now, is it just me? Am I so jaded, Josh, that I don't see a theological debate here?
So within evangelical Christianity, and even a broader swatch of Christianity, I don't know if the debate is there. But the Old Testament belongs to the Jewish faith, and what that looked like in the Old Testament, what the Jewish faith looks like today, and it belongs to the Orthodox and Catholic and Protestant Christian. It belongs to all of those faiths. And so there actually are some different views as to what the Ten Commandments are, how they're to be numbered. One of the things I found that's really interesting when I was reading about and researching the Ten Commandments is that the phrase 10 commandments, or originally it was the 10 words. The Geneva Bible in 1560 changed it from the 10 words to the 10 commandments, because if you look at it, some of them are less so a command and more just like, here's this way to view life. But the 10 words of 10 commandments, that phrase in the Bible only appears once, and it's not referring to the 10 commandments that we know. Mm-hmm. It's referring to Exodus chapter 34, which has a whole different set of 10 commandments. In fact, 2 of them overlap with the ones we know in Exodus 20. But there's some really strange commandments in Exodus 34, just for fun.
Go ahead.
I thought I'd read a couple of them for us. So in Exodus chapter 34, verse number, way down at the bottom of the chapter, verse number 28, it says, Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water. He wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. And that's the only place in the Bible.
This is not the same 10 commandments?
No, it's not the.
See, this
the
is new to me. Have you ever heard that before?
When I first learned this, it just like blew my mind.
Okay.
I was like, this is so weird. And these commandments, you were saying earlier about the 10 commandments, as we know them, they seem pretty benign. It seems like something we can agree with, right? Don't steal, don't murder, don't covet. All those things seem good to me. Right. And most people in America would agree with that moral law. Yeah. This is a weirder set of 10. Do not offer the blood of sacrifice to me along with anything containing yeast. That's one of the 10. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. So no cheeseburgers. You can't cook the meat with the milk. Do not make any idols. So there is one that overlaps.
Right.
Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. That's one of the 10 commandments, to celebrate that festival. So it's a very different set of 10.
More specific to the Jewish people, the Israelites.
Yes.
Very specific.
Yes. And so if we, in our modern evangelical Christian context, looked at these 10 and we said these 10 represent the law, the mitzvah, the 613 commandments that God gave through the Old Testament, these 10 are like the poster child of it. We'd be like, ooh, I don't know if that really applies to us.
No, and plus I think I can follow those. I won't cook a goat in goat's mother's milk. I mean, I could follow that one pretty easily.
Yes. Yeah. I think you bring up a good point about them being like, they're more specific. And so in some contexts, they might be even easier to follow than something like don't lie.
Yes.
You know, that's asking a lot of a person.
Because then if you look at the 10 commandments and then you look at what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, where he basically took the 10 commandments and said, you can't even think these things.
Yeah.
If you think these things, you're just as guilty. If you hate your brother and you really hate him, then you're as guilty as if you killed him.
Yeah. Yeah. He took the 10 commandments already was the idea that the 613, the whole law, the whole covenant relationship between God and Israel could be summarized in this. And Jesus said, don't be so focused on the summary, but like, yeah, don't even think it. Don't even feel it. Set up guardrails even further out to stay away from sinful lifestyle.
Yes.
But I also find it interesting that when Jesus was asked to summarize the law, he didn't give a set of 10.
No.
He gave 2.
Yes.
Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And on these 2, all the law and prophets hang.
And it's true.
Absolutely. And I think if Louisiana governor or any of the other 12 states who have tried this, instead of posting the 10 commandments in a classroom, if they said, hey, we're going to take Jesus's summary of the law, love God and love your neighbor, and we're going to post those, that's darn near the golden rule.
It is, but as soon as he said Jesus, people would
Absolutely.
they would have a fit. But if he didn't say that, if he just said, we're going to post this and it's going to be love your fellow students, but you have to say love God. Jesus said love God.
Yes. And that's for, there are some people, and even that governor himself said, this isn't a matter of religious test. We're not enforcing Christianity on people. It's just a set of moral laws. And I get where he's coming from with that, but also commandment number 1, have no other God.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I think brings us full circle to when I first read this, when I first saw that this had happened. I said, why is this secular body trying to put my faith onto people? Because not everyone in those public schools has my faith. And if you want to divorce the first commandment from the rest, if you want to divorce even Jesus's summary of 2, loving God and loving neighbors, well, we're okay with loving neighbors, but we don't want to be too particular about making sure people love God. Even then, I feel like you've abandoned my faith. You've abandoned what the key message of the law. So I feel like ultimately you can never really summarize the law, summarize the Bible, any portion of our faith, that when that summary excludes loving God and worshiping him only.
I agree with that. However, is it okay for Governor Landry or any of us who believe in God, who are in Christ, who are believers, to step back and say, are we to step back and say, we will give up our freedom of speech because we will give up one part of the First Amendment because the second part we want to exercise.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we're saying, all right, the free speech part of the First Amendment is outweighed by our need for freedom of expression in our worship.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So we're basically told to shut up.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. If we're living in a pluralistic society where we have multiple religions and multiple worldviews that are coexisting together, then sometimes it feels like in order to make room for everyone else, that I'm no longer able to express my faith the way that I want. And so as a Christian, like I want to declare that I love God and I love others. And I want everyone around me to love God and love others. And I want people to live by the 10 commandments. I want people to follow the law in general. I want people to live a set apart life for God. I want that desperately for people. So how do I share that good news without infringing on their rights and their expression and their faith? And it's just like that. Yeah, it's a difficult tension, and sometimes it can feel like a personal attack.
But are we called not to infringe? Are we called not to infringe?
Not by the Bible. By the government, we're not to infringe on other people's faith. But the Bible doesn't take that into account.
But we're not just so we don't deny them.
Yes.
If you have a different faith,
yes,
a different religion, a different way of worshiping, and I don't infringe on it, but I speak boldly my worship, my thoughts, my God.
Yeah.
How can I be wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And so if the 10 Commandments are up on the school, whose religion is that? Is it a religion or is it a principle that God exists and that this way of living, I mean, let's face it, all of our laws in Western government, Western society, our laws are based on what we see in the 10 Commandments.
yeah, absolutely. Societies before what we now deem the West, societies before that did not value children, did not value women, did not value the weak, the sick, the elderly. That comes from Christian tradition. And you even have secular historians that look at the development of society and they said, look what Christianity has done for the world. Hospitals, universities, those public education. It's funny because this all comes back to rules about public education. That didn't exist before Christianity. Like, Christianity has reformed the world, and so much about we can all agree, don't steal, don't covet, don't lie, don't murder. Why can we all agree on that? Because subconsciously it's baked into the framework of our society.
And I'll take it a step further, Josh. It's baked into the framework of each of us.
Yes, I think so.
It is baked. Let's, people want to say we are, humanistic. We are evolving. We are natural selection. We are all these things. Well, how could we have an innate knowledge of right and wrong and good and evil if there wasn't an authority that is way greater than us?
Yeah.
Because if we were little gods, if we controlled our own world, I couldn't love you.
Yeah.
It's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that I know there is good and evil and that I can love you, even if it's not maybe called love, but I see you and you're hurting and I want to help you. There's a natural instinct to do that.
Yeah.
And that has to come from somewhere. And people have to understand, if people would stop and look, there has to be a God. There has to be an authority that's greater than us, that plants that in us.
Yeah.
So how do we, and I think everybody knows that. So saying, honor me, because the first four commandments are basically saying, this is how you honor me.
Yeah.
This is who I am, and this is what I'd like you to do to honor me.
Yeah, it's like the first 3 or 4 are love God, and then the last 6 or 7 are how to love your neighbor.
Yes.
Jesus' summary, I think, was pretty good.
Yes.
No, I think you're right that there is so much as science continues to develop, and one of the beautiful things about science and biology and anthropology is it's always changing and growing, and we learn all these different connections that humans have to other animals, that we have to the world around us. And sometimes it can be really humbling to see a picture of our solar system and see the little blue dot. There's a famous picture taken from a satellite, and the little blue dot on the screen is Earth, and just shows you how small it is. And so there's something so humbling about that. But the more that science progresses, it still, after all these years, has never taken away the fact that there's something set apart. There's something different about humans. We have a sense of morality and religion. We learn that there's other organisms that have means of communication. Maybe that's not unique to us. We learn there's some other animals that mate for life. Well, that's not unique to us. There's no animals out there practicing religion. There's no animals out there having existential crises because they're worried about making the most and making a difference in the world. And why did they exist? That's a uniquely human thing.
Absolutely.
There's something that sets us apart.
That's such a great point.
And you and I, it's a beautiful thing that we can say, Jesus, the God of Israel, the God of the Bible, is the God of my life. and I know him, and I can attribute that set apartness to him. We are living in the image of God. We can attribute that to him. And yeah, I want people around me to know that. I want people to have that sense of peace that comes with it. I want my faith to be spread. I want people to realize that. And so, yeah, I would never want to divorce the first half of the 10 Commandments from the second half. I would never want to separate loving your neighbor and loving God, because I think they go together, lock and step.
Yeah. I there's two things that I want to bring up. One, I don't trust politicians. So
I don't think you're the only one on that.
So the first thing that I'm thinking is Governor Landry did this to keep winning elections.
Yeah.
To solidify himself with the base.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't really that he cared that maybe putting these in the school and making them kind of like furniture, institutionalized furniture,
Yes.
that is in there, that somehow it would wear off. It would have osmosis effect on all the students, and they would suddenly behave better and everything. There's a part of me that thinks maybe that could happen.
Yeah.
But again, I'm jaded because of him. The other thing is, on the other side, I also believe that the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not, that flies right into the dictatorial relativism of today's public education.
Yeah.
And everybody in it. That is the whole thing of, I'm okay, you're okay. Let's create this safe space. We can talk about 800 genders. We can talk about all the different things, but don't tell me thou shalt not and thou shalt.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because that's not healthy nowadays. What's healthy is to be, you're your own, you're the maker of your own rules.
Yeah.
And so it flies, his attempt at doing this flies right into the heart of where the war is.
Yeah.
In our public schools.
Yeah, I think the current state of public education is an overcorrection of a problem that had happened for a while. This idea that everything has to be dogma, everything has to be absolute. Like, your life should, if you want to be a success, like, you need to follow this formula. Your way of viewing the world, your religion needs to be this or needs to be this, and like, you need to stick to it. And there's been this pull to say, hey, like, let's make some space for some more interpretation, some more lifestyles. Like, you can give me this list of how to be successful, like graduate high school, get a college degree, get a job, get married, have kids. Like, you can give me that formula, but not everyone is able to fit into that. And so some people will like run themselves ragged trying to follow that formula when it just doesn't work in their life, in their situation. And so we want to make room for them. We want to have grace for people that are living a life that looks different. But yeah, I think you're right in that it's become problematic. It's an overcorrection of that. We are now making so much space that there's no real guidance and direction. There's no real instruction that's coming from education. Liberal arts began, the whole idea of a liberal arts education was so that an individual would have a broad spectrum of understanding, that they would have, some understanding of religion and philosophy and literature and art and dance and music. And if they can understand a little bit of each of these, they'll be a more useful cog in the machine. But we've broadened it so much that now people don't really have a purpose, and they know so many things, but little things about those many things, that they still don't know, like, I don't know, people graduate,
who they are.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
They don't know who they are, what their purpose is. And so we have students that are graduating that are brilliant by this metric, and by the metric of knowing what they're going to do with their life and how they're going to live it, they fall flat.
The old, I wonder if anybody reads Think and Grow Rich anymore by Napoleon Hill.
I've never read that. I'm adding it to my
I'm
list
sure
now.
you haven't. No, don't. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill was a huge, probably one of New York Times bestsellers for decades, because it was boom, 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 boom. Here's what you do. Here's how you program yourself
Yeah.
to get rich. It's perfectly in line of what you were talking about, where you follow this. Well, not everybody could do that.
Yeah.
And that book has, in today's world, it has fallen off the shelf. I don't think I've never even heard it mentioned in the last decade.
No, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. But at one time, it was huge. Everybody had to read it. You have to read this. It was who you were.
I know that there's a number of popular speakers, public figures today that are pushing that same sort of mindset, that sort of approach to life, and they are ridiculed. I think of someone like Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
Who, I mean, he's controversial for a number of reasons, and everyone has an opinion about
him.
And
he loves being that too.
Yes, absolutely. That's what makes him the money. That's
Yeah.
what, that's who he is. But one of the things that received a lot of criticism about him was he was telling people, hey, here's your rules. Here's how you're going to live, and take these tangible steps. Get up and make your bed. Like, go out and go to work. And for some people, those were like mind-blowing pieces of advice. They're like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. Now I feel productive. But yeah, he was receiving criticism because people were saying, well, not everyone can follow this. This doesn't fit. This isn't accepting of all lifestyles and perspectives. And he's receiving criticism for it. And I get it. And we're holding this thing in tension. But yeah, it seems to be like a culture war now of, here's the way you should live. Here's making room for everyone. And I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle,
So how do you, and we talked about this before, Josh, and we've covered this in one of our shows, is that in this world of no absolutes, no even absolute truth, you have the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Which are truths. You have Christianity, which I believe with all my heart is the truth. Jesus Christ walked this land, walked in this world. He was.
Yeah.
And he was who he said he was. But as we intentionally, I think, spread this out so thinly, the truth, that there is no truth now. How do you and we're talking about 10 Commandments, we're talking about Governor Landry, we're talking about what he did. The more I think about it, I want to pat him on the back. It may be wrong, it may be jaded, it may be that he did it out of political expediency or whatever, but he did it. Yeah. He injected truth into an otherwise truthless world.
Yeah.
Isn't that a good thing?
It's one of those things where, yes, there's absolutely goodness. Like, I believe in the 10 Commandments. I want everyone to follow the law of God. I want people to know who God is. I want that so much. But like, for me, I can't overlook this sounds really aggressive, the weaponization of it, the sort of power grab.
I get it.
It's, he started his public statement about this by saying, I'm probably going to get sued for this. Like, he knew what he was doing was making a public stand. Yeah. And he's saying, we are going to, basically like putting a cattle brand on the classroom. Mm-hmm. We're going to say, this classroom, the public schools in Louisiana belong to the conservative side of the argument.
Yeah.
And I don't want my faith to be weaponized like that, because I believe it's true and because I want people to know it. And because I want that truth put into their life, I don't want it to be just a piece in a political game.
I get that. And but then there's also what I was thinking. I can't get it out of my head now. I wish I could, but it's almost like, yes, we need to shock. We need to inject truth. It's almost like There was a time when the Ten Commandments were everywhere.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was in school where you started every day with the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. These things were part of our culture. They didn't affect me. I never looked at this and said, let's say the Ten Commandments in the school. I never looked at them and said, oh, they're forcing me to do something.
Yeah.
They were there and they made sense to me, and we talked about them.
Yeah.
And we prayed, but I never felt ostracized because of it. I never felt like I had to join in because of it. I felt like it did unify us.
Yeah.
But it was truth. There was a truth to it.
Yeah.
That anchored us all. And now, why does it feel so alien at this point? How could it get to the point where that it becomes so foreign and so alien and so intrusive and so just in your face, weaponized?
Yeah.
How did that happen? And is it time that we did that?
Yeah.
I don't want to be Jerry Falwell. I don't want to be the moral majority. I don't want to be Anita Bryant getting up and bashing people.
Yeah.
I love people. And we have to love people regardless of who they are and what they believe in.
Yeah.
It is not up to us to judge. But shouldn't we inject truth, especially into young people?
Yeah. I think that you're absolutely right. I believe it's true. It's one of those things where, like, I want people to realize, like, I believe in the Bible. I believe the Ten Commandments are a good thing. It's a essential part of our faith. I think it's good. So I don't want people to misunderstand that. I think a lot of it comes down to the testimony of individuals versus the testimony of an institution. And I think about how all through the New Testament, the institution, the man, was never pro-Christianity. And I think that in the world that we live now, it's different. The highest religious affiliation is none. People that just don't really care about religion.
Yes.
Now when push comes to shove, when grandma dies, when you lose your job, when your spouse and you're having trouble with them or they leave you, like, people end up back in church. When push comes to shove, people want to seek out God.
Yes.
But from week to week, most people in America just don't really have much of an opinion about church or about God or about their faith. And so we're living in a society now, and it's by a lot of standards, it's very sad that Christianity is not the majority. Right. It's not the man. It's not the system. And I don't think that the solution is to fight to make the system Christian again, but for us as individuals to focus on our witness, and us as individuals to share our testimony with people, to build relationships that are strong enough to bear the weight of the truth that can sometimes be shocking and be hurtful, but that they need to hear sometimes. And I think that comes much better from me, a Christian in school who's talking to my classmate, than the Christian poster that's been hung on the wall because the government said it had to be there. I think it just means a lot more when it's coming from a person. And so I almost think that this energy is misplaced, where we're trying to get the system being back to being Christian, when we should be focused on us as individuals and smaller institutions like the church. Like, does your local church have a connection with the school? Like, does your local church provide a Bible study at the high school or at the college? Does your local church participate in the Child Evangelism Fellowship or similar programs at an elementary school? Are you as an individual, are you as a small local church doing something to make a difference? Or are you just voting in a way to where you're going to get the system back to being Christian so that we can just sit back and say, it's good now. We're back to being a Christian nation. Or are you as an individual going to take up that challenge and live a set apart life?
Wow. I don't know how to respond to that except to say amen. I agree with you. I want to. I so much want to bring truth back into our society.
Yeah.
You know, being able to talk, and I think because of the age difference, because of my age, I remember a time when TV was in its infancy.
Yeah.
So everybody sat out on your porches at night. Everybody watched out for your neighbors. You didn't lock doors. You disciplined the neighbors' kids as well as your own.
Yeah.
And you loved because you were connected. And so there's a frustration that comes with being my age and losing that and losing the ability to speak the truth.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm coming from when I look at that and say, yeah, we need to inject truth into this. We need to shock people. You're right. I'm wrong. I mean that. And I'm not being humble. This is not false humility. You're right. What has to happen is it has to come from me.
Mm.
I have to be willing to be truthful in love. I have to be willing to reach out to those who don't agree, to risk, to be vulnerable, to risk being rejected. And if you look at that, that's everything that Jesus Christ was.
Yeah.
He was in the world. He wasn't in some ivory tower saying, hey, if you want my message, come and see me. I'll be here on Thursdays at 4:00.
Yeah.
He was out walking amongst everybody. He was suffering rejection. He was suffering people attacking him. He didn't do it in a way that said, I'm coming and I'm putting these 10 commandments up in every city I go to.
Yeah. And it shocked the people around him. Jesus's own disciples were confused again and again and again through the Gospels. They're like, whoa, hold on, Jesus. I thought you were bringing the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Riding in on a donkey? Where's your war horse? Like, is it about time that you're going to overthrow the government and institute your rule? They're like, come on, Jesus.
And where's these signs that you're putting?
Yeah, they were waiting for that. And
Yeah.
instead, the signs that the early church was posting were secretly written in the dirt.
Yeah.
As they signed the ichthus.
Yes.
to secretly to avoid persecution and to say, like, we believe in truth and we believe in a set apart life, and even if the government, even if society, even if the world around us doesn't, that's not a loss for us, because we know we know the Creator, and we know that He's making a difference in our life and in our church, and that was their motivation through it. And I'm inspired by that. And honestly, I look to people from your generation who lived in a society where Christianity was the norm, where it wasn't a shock to post the 10 Commandments in school, where you could pray in school. And honestly, the world was simpler. The world was the world within the United States was at a lot more peace. It's like, I have a sense of almost envy for that. Like, I would love that, man. I'm a Christian. I want the people around me to be Christian. I want the world to be easy. I want to share morals with the people around me so that we don't have to argue about what is good. People don't even fight over whether or not Christianity is true anymore. Now they're fighting over whether or not it's good at all, whether it's worth believing in.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, that's heartbreaking to me, because I believe it's good, and I want to make the case that it's good and worth believing in.
And you really don't have that. And what's sad to me is that you actually think you have a choice in that.
Yeah.
It's not about, is there a Jesus? Was there a Jesus? Is there a Jesus? Is there a God? Is this truth? Like C.S. Lewis and Josh McDowell and everybody else who set out to prove their atheism or agnostic beliefs and came to know Jesus in reality through that. Instead, it's easier now to just say, okay, you can have it. I just don't think it's good.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate in laziness. That's just giving up.
Yeah.
That's basically saying, that's fine.
That's why it's so frustrating to me. The number one religion in the United States is none. I don't have an opinion on it.
Yeah.
I don't go to church. I don't know. I haven't thought about those things. Is Christianity right or wrong? I don't know. What difference does it make to me?
Right.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm just, I'm frustrated when I hear that. But to know that's where our society is, like, we have to change our approach to, if we want to make a difference in the world, if we want to live faithfully within the setting that God has put us, it might involve changing our approach to that.
Well, I think your approach is Christ's approach. And I think after going through this whole thing and talking this whole thing through, I now feel like this wasn't the best move. That it was in your face. It was institutionalized truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And truth isn't absorbed by people through institutions. Truth is absorbed by individuals from another individual.
Yes. In relationship.
With whom they have a relationship.
Yes.
And trust. And so we've come full circle, folks. I have. Maybe Josh hasn't, but I have.
No, man. Every time I talk about something like this, every time we have these discussions, I feel like part of my faith is more solidified and part of it is more open to question and wondering and meditation.
Yeah. And that's the way we should be.
Yeah.
That's the way we should be. But this is, I want people to understand. I think it's important for me that you understand that no matter how old you are, that through discussion with someone you love, I mean, this was a perfect example of a relationship based on love and true and real communication, that both people can come to a truth that becomes real, a real truth, not a, okay, I'll agree.
Yeah.
Just because I know I can't win. So his argument's stronger. So it wasn't about that. It was about you actually getting to a truth. And the truth is for Christianity is I need to love you. I need to invest my life in you. I need to empty my cup into you. And at that point, you will understand where I'm coming from. And you will understand my truth. No, it'll become your truth. Not you won't understand my truth.
Yeah.
I love this. This is amazing, being able to come in and, there's a difference of what, 50 years in our
Joe,
close, 40?
How old are you?
I'm 71.
I'm 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of years, but the spirit of the Holy, we prayed before the show. And I basically prayed and said that I wanted us to be able to get out of the way, and in spite of us, the truth of the Holy Spirit, the truth of God would come through and that God would be glorified in this.
Amen.
And ultimately, that's what happened. It wasn't you or me, but the age doesn't matter.
Oh, no.
And it's the wisdom in the Lord, and it's the truth of the Holy Spirit.
It's the Holy Spirit that unites us. The reason why we can gather together as a church with people who take different stances on political issues, have different experiences, are different ages, speak different languages, is all because the Spirit of God unites us.
Yeah.
That's it. It goes beyond us, and we have to give God the glory for it.
Amen. I think that's good enough to leave it. Let's leave it on that. I wish you all a good week, a great week. God bless you. I hope you find the truth. Ultimately, I hope you find the truth of Jesus Christ in your life, and I hope you're willing to look and examine and explore and find him. I look forward to talking to you. We both do next week as we come together again. Continue this journey. If you like this, subscribe to us on YouTube, if you would, and follow us on Apple Podcast and Spotify and all those other things that I know nothing about, but I know that you could find us there, and that's what's important. We love you. We thank you for tuning in and continue on this journey with us. Have a great week.